The other thing, we can model an alternative strategy for our neighbors, and this nets us around 10 grand extra of profit per year, over and above what we would be making from selling those same calves just off the cow like we do with the rest of them. And now I'm going to kind of get into the economic part of this because it's absolutely essential to the whole thing. Like I said, it has to be reproducible. The neighbors have to want to do this. The water leasing. We've got the most senior water rights in our part of the valley, and we have a lot of them. And we have one ditch in particular, it's 3 miles long. You put 10 cubic feet per second in the top of this ditch, and you get 0.5 out the bottom end. Fantastically inefficient. Completely, next to completely useless from an agricultural perspective, especially with me wanting to flood irrigate. So what did we do with this? We worked with the Columbia Basin Water Transactions Program, which is actually salmon mitigation money, since that's where our water eventually goes. And we brokered a deal where we can shut this diversion down in mid-July, and they will pay us for the hay that we lose. So we returned 10 cubic feet per second to the Clark Fork. We made about 16 grand off the deal. I used like a third of that to buy the hay that we were missing. And we bought that hay from one of our neighbors, which is tremendous. And we got regrowth on the pastures because we had a little late rain. So that's another way to add a layer of income by essentially marketing the ecological values that are associated with the ranch, which I think, as has been said by many of the presenters so far, is a really powerful thing and is a direction we really need to be looking when we look at how we put these pieces together and try to survive on the land. Oh, it's cut off. Conservation income. We work with the NRCS. We are in the Conservation Stewardship Program. Essentially, they are paying us to do things I would have done anyway. And we bring in a good chunk from that. We've got public hunting. We bring the public onto the ranch. And that's actually, I'm not the public, but I didn't have a picture of anybody else's animal. But we bring the public onto the ranch, and through a state program called block management, we can be paid to provide that resource to the public. So that's another really good layer of stuff. These are all the partners we work with out there. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but as you can see, it's a bunch of people. It involves agencies. It involves nonprofit groups. It involves other ranching organizations. It involves schools. These are all integral parts of what we raise on the ranch. You know, this is part of our operation, and it's as important as the calf crop to me. And I will say that as far as the results go, doing this stuff has made the difference between a ranch that loses money and makes money. We've added about $70,000 of non-agricultural or $80,000 of non-traditional agricultural income to the ranch. And that has taken us from a ranch that is losing money to one that could actually service its own debt. That gives me a little goosebumps when I think about it, because you know, if you think about that, if you can set this up to service its own debt, well, heck, you know, pretty soon I might not need to be working for somebody. I might be able to do this on my own if I can figure out the equation. What else have we done? I would make a strong argument that we have fundamentally improved the ecology of our ranch. We have riparian areas that we can now control access to, so we can decide when we want to graze them, when we don't. We have returned a large chunk of flow to Dry Cottonwood Creek and the Clark Fork River in the driest times of the year, and that makes a big difference in a river where the flow target's like 60 CFS. So that's, you know, it's a small river in that upper reach. We have, and we've been able to pique the interest of the neighbors too. That's the cool part, is I'm starting to get people asking questions about, well, how'd you make it work out this way? You know, where did you guys get, you know, how did you guys raise the money to rebuild your corrals? Did somebody donate them to you because you're a nonprofit group? And I say, no, the calves bought it, and the water bought it. These agreements, these partnerships that we have, that's what allows us to do this. To return to the restoration thing. Like I said, we got about 1,000 test pits so far on the ranch. I'm going to have to whip through this. Essentially, we're at the mercy of a bureaucracy. You know, we're waiting for the cleanup agencies to get together and get this business done. And they are I think that they're moving slowly, but they're moving steadily. So hopefully in the next 3 years, we're going to see a ton of soil being moved and some real change happening. We have an educational component. We bring a ton of kids on to do projects from local high schools, from colleges. We've done fence tear-outs. We've done restoration projects on the creek. We do adult education. We actually partnered with the state legislature and another educational group to offer hazardous material training classes. So adults in that area could get the certification that they needed to work on their own land and actually have a real investment in this process. We had 3 of these classes and trained about 50 people to do this. We've got outreach. This is one of our branding parties. We get the whole community together as much as we can, and we work together. We brand our calves, and some strange people come out to these things. We've got the locals. This guy was one of our interns who'd never touched a cow before in his life. That was like his first day, and we were having a branding. This guy was a vegetarian from Missoula who just kind of wanted to see what it was he wasn't doing. And for these people to rub shoulders is a really good thing. Our interns get to rub shoulders most of all. This is me being happy because these people are shoveling. And so having interns has been a really helpful thing. Anyway, so for the last couple minutes, I just got 5 minutes left or something, but I want to talk about the future. I want to talk about what I think this thing can be and can do. I think the ranch as it stands today is a success within its boundaries. What I think it can be and what ideas like this can be is a success beyond those boundaries. What the ranch adds up to is a physical space for pragmatic and creative thinking about ranching in our part of the world. It's the opportunity for ranchers and conservationists to find common ground. It's a chance for interns, generally from cities, to contribute meaningfully to these landscapes. So what can we do with this? What can we do here? A lot of the problems that we face, whether it's a wolf thing or a water thing or whatever else, it revolves around ethics and aesthetics. It revolves around how we think the world should look and how we think the world should be. And that's nowhere is that as clear as something like this. Like I had a neighbor, I may not have time to totally finish the story, but I had a neighbor and we went down. She's been ranching there. Her family's been in that valley for generations. We looked at these two parts of the same creek on our place, and she, for the life of her, cannot see what my problem is with this and why I want to control access to this area to make it look more like this. And I would argue that we can't really solve that issue through discourse on the spot. We have to solve that by building a foundation of a common aesthetic and a common ethic about how we should treat land and what kind of a system we want to end up with. And that's kind of a high-flown thing, but I have, I think, one concrete idea about how we get from this to that. And the way that I think that we do this is we build our new ideas on a foundation of common experience. I think that a tremendous amount here depends on the landscape. And a tremendous amount here depends on getting binocular vision, which is to say seeing through the eyes of conservation and ranching and putting those two together to get a more far-reaching perspective. One of the things I want to do in the future here, this is sort of the next project, is to partner with the Clark Fork Coalition, a ranchers group in the area, and the University of Montana to establish what I would call, for lack of a better word, a ranch campus. It would entail a lot of the same stuff we're already doing on dry cottonwood with regards to the way we're managing our land and all that, but there would be a much expanded educational component. We would do 2 things. We'd have a large internship program where people were coming there, they were getting a chance to work not just on our model ranch, but on the ranches of other people who are doing interesting things. At the same time, we would be bringing in a series of lecturers, both in stewardship and agriculture, but also in the arts and in culture in general. My contention is that we must stop being a backwater, or being perceived as a backwater, essentially, and begin to ranch on what you might call the avant-garde. You want to ranch on the cutting edge, not just of agriculture, but of culture in general. And I think that I think that we have a chance to do this, because the nexus where humans hit the land, the place where we actually hash things out on the ground, is an incredibly fruitful space, intellectually speaking. And I think that if we can seed that space by bringing in a few of these thinkers and putting them in context of a rural community that really wants to grab a hold of this and make the most out of it, I really think that the sky's the limit. So I think I'm out of time. But in a nutshell, that's where I want this project to go. I want it to expand in its scope, and I hope to be the kind of model that, like the things we do on the ranch, can be reproduced in other valleys and in other contexts. So thank you very much for having me.